In weight loss, we are dealing with animals that are under energy deprivation. So they are restricting energy. And all the tables that we have is to cover all nutrients for an animal that is being fed according to the energy requirement. So that tables do not help us. You can look at the label and see a diet with 30% crude protein for dogs and think, oh, this is high protein. The diet have a high protein in dry matter. But when you calculate how many grams they are eating of that diet and how many grams of protein they're eating, you see there's very close to the minimum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast, where we seek to discuss current research and how it may apply to innovation in the pet food industry. I'm our host, Julia Pezzali, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Aulus Carciofi about formulation strategies for weight loss diets and how weight loss impacts energy metabolism. Dr. Aulus Carciofi is a full professor at São Paulo State University in Brazil, Jabuticabal campus, where he leads the clinical nutrition residency program at the veterinary hospital. He also directs a research laboratory focused on pet food processing, nutrition, and nutrition-related diseases. Aulus is also currently the president of the European Society of Veterinary Comparative Nutrition and board member of the Brazilian College of Animal Nutrition. Welcome to our podcast, Dr. Carciofi.
It's a great pleasure for me to be here.
Awesome. We are excited to have you and to talk about weight loss programs and obesity. Today here in the United States, we have a clearly epidemic of obesity in dogs and cats. More than ever, we have more dogs and cats overweight and obese, and it's been a big challenge because we understand that obesity is a disease and it can have many negative health consequences for our furry friends.
Not only in the United States, but maybe worldwide. Here in Brazil also, more than 25% of our clients in our clinical nutrition service is obese animals.
And you have an idea why in Brazil this may be why this is leading to this higher obesity incidence?
Yeah, I think that's worldwide because of the new style of life. Every animal that lives in the human environment, if I can say that, because if you look at a zoo, the lion is obese, the crocodile is obese, the parrot is obese, We have plenty support of food and restrictions in exercise. This is not a good combination. And also, we neuter them. So it's not natural for an animal don't have their full endocrine system. And this creates a lot of metabolic alterations and obesity.
Yeah, combination of lifestyle and hormonal changes and can lead to what we've seen today.
For more than 20 years, BioOrigin manufactures high-quality yeast-based ingredients through a sustainable biotechnological process, guaranteeing full traceability from the crop to the bowl. Through specialization in the fermentation process, BioOrigin brings the right solution for specific nutritional, palatability, and health appeals, such as gut health, immune system, skin health, weight control, and more. BioOrigin's products are natural origin, non-GMO, and certified sustainable by Bonsucro. BioOrigin is your partner for high-quality, yeast-based ingredients to add value to pet foods worldwide. Learn more at bioorigin.net.
And diet has a big impact on it. And when you think about obese animals, a lot of those animals, they understand that's a challenge and go to a weight loss program. And from my understanding, you manage the clinical residence program and you work with your students and a lot of the pet owners on weight loss programs and also do research in this area. And when you think about formulating diets specifically for those patients that are undergoing weight loss, can you talk with us a little bit more about what should we prioritize in the formulation in terms of how we formulate? What guidelines can we go for? Should we formulate in dry matter, energy basis, body weight? What is the difference between formulating a diet that for an animal that's under weight loss program and energy restriction compared to a animal that's going to be a energy maintenance?
So, Julia, this is a very important point because when we do clinical nutrition, We are always dealing with patients that are not in a health state. And our current guidelines and our current approach to formulation of diet don't work very well. And unfortunately, when we formulate on dry matter basis, that is useful because it's similar to the laboratory results that is that way, and the regulatory because it's the way that you build your label. But that don't mean that the diet is adequate for that patient. It's very important. Even if you correct to energy base for 1,000 kcals, you just equalize diets that are very different in energy content. But when you deal with patients, the disease changes a lot their energy metabolism. And the only safe way is to look on the true requirement. And the true requirement is grams or milligrams per kilo of body weight. And we need to change our mind completely. So we took a setup of around 95 dogs, and we did a body weight loss program on them. And then we used the main 5 diets that we have in Brazil that are most international. And we analyzed this diet for amino acids and minerals, not vitamins. And then we look at exactly how much they are eating on each nutrient and if that really covered the requirement. And we saw that depending on the diet formulation, even crude protein didn't cover. For example, a diet with 28, 27% of crude protein, if it's not very, very low in metabolizable energy, will not cover the requirement. But when you look at on dry matter base, the minimum is 12 or 18. So you have an impression that the diet is enough, but you are feeding too low, too little. And then during this study, we identified many amino acids, especially methionine and cysteine, and tryptophan. And I was threonine in some formulations that was low. And it's like for some, when you look at individual patients, depending on the diet, 1/3 of the patients will eat less than the minimum established in the NRC requirement, what is very high rates. And we have this data published in a paper showing that the solution is to change our approach. And to test that, what we did, we fixed how much the animal needs to eat of energy to have a health rate of body weight loss. And looking our own data, there is more than 100 programs that we look carefully on to build this number. And also comparing to other publications, we found that most animals will lose around 0.8 to 1% of body weight per week if you fed them from 55 to 60 kcals per kilogram of metabolic body weight, but the actual body weight. There is another point. We have very different approaches, and in books they work with target body weight. We don't do this more for many years. We are doing body weight loss here for more than 25 years. And my first paper on that was in 2005. I was remember to prepare myself for this show. So it's more than 20 years. And then we, at that moment, tried to use very specific tools, like we built tables on, equations on body measurements to understand the amount of fat mass. And we use also bioimpedance. So it's very complicated. And at the end, our approach usually nowadays is very easy. We just use body condition score. If the body condition score is over 6 or especially over 7, we will just weigh the animal, use the actual body weight, and based on that, for dogs, we will feed 60 kcals per kilo of metabolic body weight per day. This is simple and also have the advantage to allow you to calculate how much of each nutrient that animal will eat for weight loss. So you can have a calculation on each nutrient if you know the composition of your diet, and you recognize which nutrients are being covered or not. But of course, energy is not covered, so it will be low because it's the only way that they lost weight loss. And then with this approach in mind, it was our first study to understand this deeper. Then we moved to our factory because luckily we have here a feed mill, so we have a extrusion lab, and we formulate a diet based on these principles. And one diet we just fed them to have an adequate crude protein intake, and the other diet in this experiment we compared these two diets. We also improve methionine 50% over the requirement, tryptophan 25% of more than requirement, and also threonine. So we guarantee that even with the restriction of the diet, these key amino acids will be plenty cover in these animals. And we use this diet in 10 dogs each to weight loss. And we could confirm this hypothesis that when we balance the amino acids based on intake, these animals lost about 20% of body weight with minimal loss of lean mass. Most of the loss they had was fat mass. And also the rate of weight loss were a little higher than the other, that we didn't correct these amino acids considering the intake. And so coming to your question is, in weight loss, we are dealing with animals that are under energy deprivation. So they are restricting energy. And all the tables that we have is to cover all nutrients for an animal that is being fed according to the energy requirement. So that tables do not help us. And you can look at the label and see a diet with 30% crude protein for dogs and think, oh, this is high protein. The diet have a high protein in dry matter. But when you calculate how many grams they are eating of that diet and how many grams of protein they're eating, you see there's very close to the minimum, very close to the minimum. So you need to change your mind and thinking like in people. If you go to a nutritionist and ask for a nutritionist, how much how is the ideal percentage of crude protein of my diet? The guy will not have an answer to you. They will say you need X grams of protein per day, because this is the true requirement. It's like we work with people, and we need to change completely the mind and work this way in dogs also.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point for people to understand that animals need requirements and grams per day, grams per body weight, not a dry matter or as a function of diet. It's a function of their metabolism needs. But for commercial diets, is a easy guideline for healthy animals when you use a dry matter energy base. But it seems very important when you deal with those animals that are under pathological conditions or weight loss. That even weight loss, they're going to be energy restriction, need very small amounts of food, and then in that small amounts, they need to have all those nutrients more concentrated. And did you see any other differences, Aulus, in you mentioned like the lean body mass, that the animals that were eating those diets that were more balanced in amino acids, they had less loss of lean body mass. Do you see any other differences in their energy, maybe movement or metabolism, that having more amino acids helped them or no?
If you talk to veterinarians worldwide, when you look at the the program of weight loss, usually you need to reduce more and more. So you do several reductions in the amount of food supply along the journey, and this creates for in many people the impression that it's become harder and harder because the animals reduce the energy expenditure. So how much calories they burn per day. And we have theories about that on adaptation, hormone reduction in thyroid hormones, for example. But that's not what we saw. And it's not what we see on papers with people. So we did this twice. We did two master science. This is one that I told you, describe it briefly on supplementation of key amino acids in the diet. And we extruded the diet at our factory and went to clients to test that. And the other was test a nutraceutical approach. And in these two experiments, consistently, what we saw is the energy expenditure of the animal increase during the weight loss. And this is quite logical because an obese individual have a quite low energy expenditure because many important part of their body are fat. During the weight loss, they lost especially fat. They lost some lean, but much less, and they lost much more fat mass. So they changed the body composition to a more healthy body composition. And this healthy body composition means they have more lean mass, so their energy expenditure is in fact higher. And we saw this consistently, and for that we use a tool that is very, very good. It's a gold standard tool that is the double labeled water methods. So we really measure CO2 production based on the decay of the two isotopes in the blood, that is O18 and C13. So, sorry, hydrogen 12, deuterium, sorry. And with that, we are very sure about this. And also what happens is at the end of the weight loss, usually the animal is more active, more prone to play, to do other normal activities that when very obese, because obese means a lot, create a lot of difficulties in breath. So they can breathe better, oxygenate better the body, though they are more active, have more energy for movements. And then altogether says that really this is the tendency. So the question is why we need to reduce energy if they're expanding more, not less. So looking to try to guess how it's going on this answer, we realized that during the beginning they lost more lean than less. Then during the end, if you do a proper diet, they're consuming or burning more fat mass than lean mass. And especially when they have metabolic adaptation, in the end of the weight loss, they are burning more fat. And if you lost 1 gram of body mass, and if gram of body mass is based on lean mass or fat mass, of course, you can see that each grams that you use to survive burning fat, you produce much more energy. So to reduce the fat content will become more harder because you need to impose a bigger restriction. But it's not because of the energy expenditure is reducing. It's because you become more efficient burning more fat than leans. This is our theory. And we need to, of course, to do more sophisticated trials to understand that. But for us, is what happens. And also, as we calculated energy expenditure, and we have in hands in our studies how much food we are feeding for the dog, and We do in vivo digestibility, so we know the metabolizable content of the diet. We have this deficit. So usually the deficit in calories to lost body weight is from 35 up to 40 kcals per kilo of metabolic body weight per day. This is a real deficit to burn. They use to consume their internal fat. And this deficit is higher in the second phase of the regimen when they are in the end of the processing of lost weight. So this also reinforces this theory that we have, that in the end they lost more lean, so the deficit is not so high. At the end, they lost more fat mass, so they need to impose a higher deficit, because each gram of body weight release much more energy for the internal metabolism, and then you need to impose a stronger deficit. But even though the energy expenditure of the animal is higher. So I don't know if it's a little complicated. I don't know if I could explain well.
No, no, that's very, very interesting. And I assume this is in dogs?
We just studied these stuffs in dogs. We never studied deeply like this. We do weight loss programs a lot in cats, but we never did nice studies with them, unfortunately.
And do you think you see the same in cats because everything is different or unique in cats and they are have a hard time losing weight sometimes too? So what are your hypotheses or challenges with weight loss in cats?
I think that will be different because of the high to gluconeogenic rates that they have always. So they are always burning, and we have data from Kate's, and you also is involved on that. And also we have data on respirometry chambers in cats when we do very different diets with high protein or high starch, we didn't see alteration in the heat increment, in the postprandial heat increment. So I think that for them, the story is different. And also, if you consider as other mammals, they are animals that have a very low energy expenditure. I don't know if you're thinking on that, because the basal metabolic rate for mammals, we try to use 70 kcals, 70 kcals per metabolic body weight. But most cats live with less than that. Most cats lives with less than that. And then their energy expenditure in home, I'm telling home, nutrient, this made a huge impact in their metabolism. We, in one experiment, we worked with intact males, own animals that have no access to outside, just in home, but they are intact males. And their energy expenditure is over 100, is 120. So it's very high. But the nutrient cats are very low. And then even the what we consider resting for them is maybe too much. So considering this difference in energy, and also that they have these high rates of protein degradation in the body, I think that the stories from them will be different, and they will be even more dependent on the type of protein and the quantity of protein that you will provide during weight loss.
Yeah, hopefully you do some follow-up studies of cats as well. It will be very interesting to see how those differences in cats, and it's always unique to see data from cats and all the hypotheses that they never meet when you work with cats.
Yeah.
It's time for our famous three.
Awesome. Sounds great, Aulus. And it was really good to talk with you about the formulation part. And as a wrap up for our listeners, we talk about the importance of feeding animals weight loss per true requirement, which is grams of nutrients per kilo body weight, and how the energy metabolism really changes during weight loss. And very interesting findings that there is not from our Dr. Carciofi study, not a really decreasing energy expenditure as they lose body weight. Is there anything else, Dr. Carciofi, that you want to emphasize to our listeners about obesity or weight loss and approaches during formulation or energy or protein metabolism?
I have also interest, I think that we need to study more, is the implication of obesity in water turnover, because in that case, I have more data on cats. So because obese cats have low energy expenditure, so we're thinking that these obese guys eat a lot. We have this common impression. But of course, during some time of their lives, they ate more than need, so they accumulate fat. But when they are in a stable phase of obesity, long time obese, they eat just a little, very low amounts of food. So when we see that leptin, we have the resistance of leptin don't work. I don't know, because this is an action of leptin, no? Eat low, eat less, reduce energy. I think that they're there, but not enough to don't make them obese. But the point is, these cats, because of the strong relationship in water and energy, they also drink very little. And we published a paper last year in British Journal of Nutrition. We showed that maybe these obese dogs, cats, sorry, drink 25% less than non-obese. And this is a lot of water. And then you see these relationships on kidney disease, urolithiasis, and obesity. And many of the hypotheses are related to the inflammation, especially in kidney disease. Of course, the chronic inflammation promoted by obese state might be part of that. But I also consider that the water turnover and the amount of urine the animal produce is also part of that. And then this is one, for me, very important point to study related to obesity. And the other is we don't have any idea of the requirement of nutrients for an animal that is under energy deprivation. Because we, like the study that I comment first, we base it on the amino acid requirement for adults at maintenance. But if you are losing lean mass and especially losing fat mass, you are living in a situation of negative energy balance. This might change everything in our metabolism, even your amino acid requirement. And we are at the moment doing a study to understand the implication of insulin resistance in amino acid metabolism. So we have this data showing that when dogs are obese, they have higher releases of insulin and higher rates of glucose in the blood. That means they have some level of insulin resistance. But also, what we are looking now at the implication of this situation in the free amino acids in the blood. And we saw that, for example, branched chain amino acids are higher in these animals, and we have data on other species and special people. And all this means that several aspects of protein metabolism are different during the obese and during weight loss. And possibly the ideal amino acid composition of their diets are different. And this is an avenue of studies that we should do in the future, I think.
Yes, when you think about protein, amino acids, sometimes we study separate from insulin, glucose, right? But is metabolism, everything is interrelated. And as we discussed as well, insulin is a anabolic hormone, not only for carbohydrate, for protein and torque and all the pathway. So I'm really excited to see these results when it gets out there.
Yeah, we are just starting very, very simple study, but when you think the anabolic action of insulin, and if the action of insulin is not enough to put glucose inside the cells, they are not enough to balance protein metabolism and the rates of protein synthesis. So, and maybe the composition of amino acids ideal in this situation also might be different. I don't know.
Sometimes we think that just animals a little bit overweight or obese is just the same with more more weight, but no, it's under a different metabolic state, different even about pathological condition and leading to other metabolic changes that are really going to change their metabolism, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and this is a key point when we evaluate, for example, AFCO standards, because AFCO trusts very much, sorry, on NRC, but we have a problem because NRC build the tables in cats and dogs that eat a lot of energy. For dogs, 132 kcals per kilo of metabolic body weight, and cats 100. These animals are rare in the in-houses, In-house they eat much less. So AFCO suggests 26% of protein, for example, minimum for cats. But most cats, if eat that diet, especially females have lower energy expenditure than males, and obese that have even lower energy expenditure. These female obese cats, if you look at how many grams they're eating in a diet with 26, 28% of protein, you calculate, you see that's very close to the minimum or below the minimum of NRC. And we have this problem in some experiments. Some cats losing lean mass during the trial, and always because of this. Is this part of the cat population that is obese eat very low, and the requirement that when we do a balance based on a standard for animal that is normal physiologically and metabolically, and but they are not normal. It's why I think that we need to revise that. We need to think, as I said before, on grams per kilo of body weight. And then you see that for most cats, the safe diets for a general population have at least 1/3 of protein. That is 33, 34. It's what I saw in my practice.
Yeah, and that's important because as we talked in the beginning of this podcast, there's epidemic of obesity. So how is our approach of formulation? Should we address more considerations or change a little bit on how we do things to make sure we are addressing the current population of dogs and cats that we have, which is not ideal, but we need to support their health, and the formulation is going to have a big impact on that.
And also, when you see these cats at the clinic, you saw that they are obese. Many of them don't have a good lean mass amount. The hair is not so nice. And then you see how many protein they are eating. But maybe in the same house, you have another male that might be intact, or a female. Female intact is very difficult, but a male that is intact or have access to outside, and they eat the same diet, and yeah, and these cats are much more muscle. But when you look at how many grams they're eating, it's much more. So they eat more protein. The diet is the same, but the food is the same, but the diet is not the same, because the diet is the amount of the food. So this is what we saw here when we are dealing with animals and diverse animals because of the owner or the condition they live.
Well, thank you very much, Aulus, for joining our podcast. It was very interesting, and I learned a lot as well from you, just listening from the studies that you are conducting in Brazil. And I look forward to seeing these results because we are in a big need of understanding what are the requirements, what are the needs of these obese animals, and what do they need to really support their weight loss in a healthy way. And I think my last question is actually two questions. One, do you have any resource if anyone wants to look more into obesity or formulation? And the last one, do you mind sharing with our audience about your laboratory? You mentioned that you are doing some studies, so it would be great for them to hear your capabilities and see how we can do those amazing studies because they're very interesting.
Thank you for this opportunity. So what we have here in the university, we have 3 areas. That is the clinical nutrition service. We have 3 residents, and we deal with case daily. And also we have in the feed mill, we have a extrusion plant that is complete, and we do studies on processing also. One of our research areas is that. And we are now working to finish a PhD on the implications of processing on protein quality. But we are trying to understand postprandial utilization of the protein. If you burn that, we create a lot of maillard, for example. So, and this is one area of interest, but we are interested in the implications of raw materials and processing in broad situation. And the third part is we have a cattery with 45 cats and 50 beagles. And so we can do our diets, we can test in our own cats or dogs, or we can test in clients. And our lab was trying to be prepared to work in clients. So now we are doing a lot of studies on using stable isotopes. I joke that people is our animal model. So usually you take a mouse and try a lot of them to apply for you. So people did a lot of trials, so they developed a lot of nice methods we can apply now for dogs. So I joke like that because dogs, cats are the same. You can do nothing invasive, and we don't want also to do nothing invasive. So we are, and then we work with double labeled water and carbon 13. So we also in carbon 13 we use bicarbonate to energy expenditure, but also in clients we use leucine, labeled leucine, to understand protein metabolism. So we did, for example, in these studies in obesity, we track protein synthesis and breakdown using lysine. And also we did a trial on chronic kidney disease, how leucine can tell us and this was interesting because, as we suppose, in fact, these dogs with chronic kidney disease have higher protein turnover, so probably they need more protein than less, but they can't tolerate too much, so we need to balance. And so we are playing a lot. And we think that it's nice to have several limitations in these studies on animals, but we have some advantage that we are working in a common live situation. For example, we did a PhD where we are looking to macronutrient distribution, so high protein or high starch. And we test that in 40 cats living in homes. And we track energy metabolism with accelerometers, movement, using in energy metabolism, use double labeled water, and we validate a method with just using saliva. So you don't need needle to collect blood in the cat. You just take some saliva and you can track what is going. So this is what our lab is doing. So we have a lot of fun, and we are open to, of course, to help others, and if companies have issues or would like to help, our help in some way will be very nice.
That's awesome. It's a very complete lab, and with a lot of good information and knowledge that you guys are generating. So thanks for doing that. And thanks again, Aulus, for joining us today, and thanks to our audience for listening.
Thank you, Julia, for the chance, and I appreciate very much, and it was very nice talking to you.